Get the screen share going. And today, make me a little bigger. Make me a little bigger today. Hello, my African friends. Did you know that everybody comes from Africa, except for like maybe some Asian islanders? That's why racism is ignorant and therefore stupid. That's my argument. And our subject, who is on the astrological chopping block today, Jeff Probst, host of 20-year, 40-season running of Survivor, would probably agree. He's a hell of a guy. I actually don't know. I didn't know that much about him. I still don't, apart from what I see in his birth chart. But in order to get some information about him to kind of verify if my intuitions about his chart were accurate, I at least looked at a few pictures of him, watched him in a couple of short form interviews, and turns out I believe I have a pretty darn accurate guess for what his rising sign is, which is determined by one's birth time. And there is not a birth time available for him. So I had to speculate and go based on what the rising sign represents, and try to match one of the signs with his appearance, his physical appearance, his surface behavior, especially in some of those short form interviews where your personality is actually kind of raw. In a sense, you don't really have a connection with the person you're talking to yet. So it's your style of breaking the ice. Also, just based on his stamina for what he's done in his professional life, having stuck with the same show for so long. The ascendant also kind of determines what the midheaven is going to be. The midheaven is the highest point of the chart, which deals with purpose and career orientation. So I think I got that whole layout right. Let me know if you agree or disagree. But there's a reason you guys think he's awesome, and that's because he has the same rising sign and overall orientation of his personality as Mary and I do, Capricorn rising. Okay. And his sun is conjunct the midheaven. So his ego and his energy, his energy reserve is perfectly in line with what he has done in his career and how the public sees him. It's about public image as well. So Capricorn rising, if we look at let's look at some pictures, actually. He's got some things going on, some kinky things, some badassery, and some very charming things as well. Also much like Mary and myself. So Capricorn is the Saturn sign, Saturn ruled sign, planet sign combination. Capricorn, Saturn have this relationship. Saturn, Satan, underworld, Capricorn, winter solstice, sun is at the lowest point of the sky, represents all things dark, but wise. All right. And we can see that he likes to wear, he's very clean cut, has a very chiseled jawline, great bone structure in his face. And he has dark attire on most of the time, dark, simple, functional attire, very much indicative of Capricorn rising in particular. So that's one of the reasons I guessed that. He also has this sort of intensity in his eye, doesn't he? This gaze. I think his eyes are like the same color as mine, even. Well, interestingly enough, he and I have the same midheaven too, Scorpio, which gives someone a public image of being kind of dark, having a piercing glare, having this kind of like this deep reserve of energy for work and stamina in his career. And he has like a very intense way of relating to people, especially when it comes to business relationships. Like you're either 100% in or 100% out. So Scorpio midheaven has a very piercing style, work style, and public image. He kind of penetrates the psyche, has this allure to him, especially among fans and people who dislike him as well. People tend to like and dislike people with this placement, weirdly enough, for the same reasons. But he has some things going on in his chart that give him a lot of charm. So we'll get to that. Let me do a share just of the chart. All right. Hope this is working, by the way. All the screen share, switching back and forth. So his Saturn is in the ruling sign of Capricorn in the first house, which makes him extra competent at what he does, extra Saturnian, extra intense, extra pessimistic in certain ways. He's very quick to tell people, no, that's wrong. Stop doing that. Stop thinking that way. Stop being a moron. Okay. That's Saturn being in Capricorn on the ascendant for someone who's already naturally Saturnian. Okay. He's kind of like, he has this like wisdom about him that it's deep moral. It's a deep moral character. One of the goals for a Capricorn rising, especially when Saturn is involved in that ascendant, is that he is an arbiter. He kind of represents being an arbiter of moral judgment for the public, for the people he's around, for the people he works with. So I would imagine, I haven't watched Survivor in like 20 years, probably since the first episode of the first season. I think that's the only time I've watched it. I would imagine that he hasn't changed that much. Also, that he's aging extremely well. That's another kind of Capricorn thing. People with this placement tend to lighten up. He's gotten more relaxed and more charming and more kind of socially open as he's gotten older, gotten more optimistic and friendly as well, I'm guessing. Based on the chart, that's what we're going on here. But that's in a hard, especially because it's in a harsh relationship. Okay, this is Saturn right here. See this red line? Square to this little conjunction, very key. Mercury and Venus in a conjunction in Libra. This is his charming side. This is his super social, super chatty, super like even intellectual and mentally oriented social personality and romantic personality. This guy loves the talk. He likes to be talked to, talked about, and he actually really likes attention. So he's kind of airy. He has an airy social persona that butts heads with his ultra discerning, pessimistic, Saturnian, wise old grandfather, don't do that kind of nature. That makes sense. So over time, we get to know our squares, this thick red line right here. These are kind of roadblocks for us early in life. And he's really opened up and become more airy, more social, more fun, and relatable and charming. Libra is a very charming energy to be around. And so he has the planet of communication and speech, that's Mercury, in the same place as his social and romantic side, that's Venus. So this guy really likes to talk. He likes to at least come off as a fair and socially open person, despite what his early expressions of the darkness of Saturn and Capricorn earlier in his life would have represented. So he probably has a praise kink. If you guys want to get into the kinky shit, I'm sure you do. Has kind of a praise kink. He likes the talk in romance as well as in socializing, you know. And the ninth house, this area of the chart, represents higher philosophy and beliefs. He likes to impress people with how much he knows about topics regarding higher beliefs and travel and culture and his experiences. It also represents foreign travel. All right. And so this is one of the things that serves as a ground for why he chose the kind of show that he did to stick with for so long, because it gives him an outlet to travel a lot to exotic and foreign places where you're kind of forced into adapting and assimilating to the circumstances that you're given, especially in a survival mode, survivor. That's ninth house. Contexts that teach you bigger lessons about life, because you've kind of had to give up so many nuanced, comfortable parts of yourself in order to adapt and survive in those places. Okay. So he really attracts people who are mentally oriented, because for a man, Venus is about what kind of female he attracts. He probably has a very Venus oriented, like a very beautiful wife. She's probably a babe. Actually, I didn't look up to see if he was married. I'm guessing he is married, actually, based on a couple of other things in his chart. North node in the 7th house right here. This is the horseshoe. 7th house is about marriage, and your north node is about where you're supposed to end up in this life. So maybe he got married later in life, but it's like a really sustainable, really solid marriage. And she might even be part of his public persona. And look, there's a nice blue, harmonious blue line connecting the north node right here, which is like purpose being one-on-one connection, intense connection with his social and romantic and mental sides to his personality. So I bet his wife, if he has one, I'm sure he does by this, point in his life, has probably some significant Libra, or at least some significant air going on in her sign. Look her up. I bet she's probably a Libra sun. Maybe not. But anyway, he's a lover boy. That's what I'm getting at. Probably didn't come off that way like earlier in the Survivor series, but he's definitely that way now. If he has been on a proper conscious path and has matured throughout his life. What else is important in compatibility, though, in his love life? I mean, we're going to be talking more and more about what this guy is into, because there's so much that indicates that. His moon is in an interesting place. If the birth time I've chosen around midday, noon, is even remotely accurate. By the way, that makes him a lunch break baby. Like, this dude he's a really hard worker. He was just like ready to get out of the womb. You know what I mean? His mom was probably a really hard working lady, probably had some Virgo in her somewhere in a significant place, because this kind of represents, for a man especially, your relationship to your mother, what your moon is, what your emotional personality is like, and how it's been cultivated. Okay. His mom was probably a really hard worker, and she was probably at work when she went into labor. She like took her lunch break and she was like, oh, I'm gonna go have this baby real quick, squirted him out. And he was like already being productive by the time she had to go back to work at 1 p.m. Lunch break baby, sun high in the sky. So your ego and your main source of personality and energy is oriented toward your midheaven, your personal peak of your mountain of achievement, if that makes sense, like where you're headed in this life, at least in the public sphere. So Henry actually has this too. People who have their sun around their midheaven tend to be very popular, have great potential to be famous, especially if they have some creative talent of some sort, some outlet. or if they're like really really intellectual or really smart, or have some kind of talent. Sun on the midheaven just gives someone a very visible personality, and for him it's a personality that's visibly dark because it's in Scorpio. Remember, he's wearing black all the time. He has that kind of those deep set eyes and that dark gaze that he gives people, but there's still like a softness and a compassion behind it. And that's where the social and the, communication personalities, Venus and Mercury respectively, are in Libra. Libra is a very soft, like wholesome, fair, compassionate, put others first, loving kind of sign. Okay. So interesting paradox that he has. But his Virgo, very, very hardworking moon sign. So he's very meticulous about how he organizes his ideas. He has everything planned out. He's very scientifically minded. And being in the eighth house, it deals with other people's money, other people's resources. So this is actually a pretty good placement for attracting abundance from the outside, from your relationships with other people, and also through crisis. He may have gained a huge inheritance at some point from his mother's side of the family. Nevertheless, he's very much inclined to use his deep connections and his emotional maturity and meticulousness to gain resources. So he's a very careful planner and very scientifically minded. Also, eighth house is a very psychologically loaded house, and this could indicate a kind of Freudian tendency sexually. Eighth house is about power play with other people and typically over other people. So another sign that he's kinky, you might want to bang his mom. I don't know. Because she did so much for him, It's like the least we can. I'm just fucking. Yeah, interesting moon placement. Alan has this. Alan has moon in Virgo. Not in the eighth house, but moon in the sign of Virgo, which makes somebody very detail oriented, very obsessive, kind of OCD. There's a bit of psychopathy with this. Like, you can get really, really locked into the details and lose sight of how it is that people are actually reacting to your mental states at any given point. But if you look at this, his moon is very positively aspected to these two planets over here. His Saturn, which is his competence. That's a nice blue triangle, 120-degree relationship to Saturn and Jupiter. Haven't talked about Jupiter yet. But his relationship with his mother probably afforded him a lot of resources. Maybe that was the reason that he got to the level that he's at in the industry. So mother relationship and emotional security, positively aspected to abundance, liquid gains. That's Jupiter. Good fortune. Okay. And it's Jupiter is in a conjunction with his Saturn. So the things that he attracts for free, his liquid gains, are in line, being expressed in the same contexts as his great competence, that kind of dark, deep Saturnian nature, that very disciplined, very competent, commands respect anytime he walks into the room, whether he's like forcible about it or more eloquent about it. It could go either way, depending on the room itself. But he's somebody who commands respect, and people are willing to follow him and basically lay abundance at his feet. So it does seem like he has like kind of a niche sort of following fan base. Him personally, not just the show that he hosts. But he's like a very attractive character. He attracts certain kinds of people who are looking for that kind of darker side in a role model, a more harsh, dry, but also very delegating and an intelligent personality. check my notes here. I took a lot of notes on this chart before I even really looked into his interviews and stuff. Yeah, his Jupiter is actually in Aquarius, even though it's like close to his Saturn. But it gives him really a boost, especially in the first house, because your first house is about your sense of self. And it's about your self-esteem and your uh how other people see you and your image of yourself based on how people react to you. Okay. So having Jupiter in the first house, especially in Aquarius, because Aquarius is about group orientation, how you relate to groups. This gives him a huge boost of confidence and positivity to his personality, to what would otherwise be an overly cold and dry personality if he were like me. Saturn on my ascendant, with Jupiter in another place on the chart, not directly involved. Actually, it is its opposite, which makes me even more of a dick. He tends to wear like I said, neutral colors and darker colors, and has a relaxed yet refined sense of style and presentation. For him, presentation really matters, even though he takes a very simple approach to that. But he's also very consistent, because Saturn in the first house is about consistency and reliability. He's always on time. This dude has never been late for an appointment, fucking ever. Okay. Yeah, that charming Venus and Mercury and Libra in the ninth house makes him amiable, likable, clear, fair in his communication. And this really complements his melancholy nature. He's a visionary. He enjoys foreign travel, and he has adaptable and enthusiastic philosophies about life. So he might be extremely inspiring to talk to one-on-one, even though he may like come off another way initially. But I have seen him in a couple of interviews. Like I said, he tends to be like that Mercury, Venus, and that Libra side to him is very pronounced in those interviews. He really turns on the softness and the warmth. So he has a pretty kick-ass balance. He is a bait ace dude. Like I said, his nodal axis, we'll call it. That was that fucking what the hell? That North Node, which is really about marriage and love and contractual agreements, like permanent connections with people. Overall, his nodal axis, you have your North Node over here. This is where you're aiming in life, and for him, it's about connection, and it's about maturing through relationships, one-on-one relationships. It has an opposite. That's the South Node, and this is the thing that you have to get over in life, the thing that you have to work through before you even have a perception of these North Node opportunities. So South Node is about, say, pre-birth baggage and karma that you bring in to this life. So there's a perfect polarity here, because it's always opposite signs, opposite houses. So what do I have here? Nodal axis makes for someone whose aim in life is to be tangibly in the limelight, wants acceptance by social groups, Aquarius, right there, is satisfied. He's meant to profit off of it in both fame and fortune. Leo North Node seeks to become more fiery, actually, as the rest of his chart is lacking in the fire element. If you see, he has a lot of earth with Virgo and Capricorn. He also has a lot of water. So he's very grounded and dependent and reliable. And he's also very deep and intuitive. That's what the water element represents. And emotionally in tune with his surroundings. His bullshit filter is really on point. Despite his intensity and dryness in some areas, he has a more cold disposition rather than a hot one. So even if he, whenever he turns on that charming Libra side, he's still actually more cold. So let's talk more about his romantic personality, because I know you guys want to talk about that, right? Like, I don't know if you guys were ever to like venture out and look for a third, like you got to look for somebody who you both look up to, who you both want to bang, you know? I think he has all of the attributes. Okay. Romantically, he's a real chatty Cathy. Okay. Who seeks independence and he needs someone who can keep up intellectually and who has a very active mind like he does. So conversation with this guy never gets boring. He's just like the bee's knees, you know? Sexually, he actually enjoys power play. And we see this with the moon and Pluto. This is about deeper, darker desires. And Uranus is about taboo inclinations, things that your peers would kind of be like, oh, you're weird. And Lilith, right here in the eighth house. Look, this is the power play house. Okay. Lilith is about shame. So he has to become more independent in his sexual vibes and just gain confidence to overcome that shame that he has about being different, about what his kinks are, especially the power play ones. Okay. There's even more to suggest that this dude is kinky as fuck. All right. And I don't know, maybe this comes out on TV, maybe it doesn't. I haven't watched enough of him. I would imagine that there are subtle hints to it because these are introverted signs over here. Okay. Scorpio, Virgo. There's a relationship between these two signs that we can see. Pluto, sextile, this nice blue line right here to his sun and Neptune. Neptune is about fantasy. Sun is about ego. Okay. So deeper, darker, taboo desires. Pluto, conjunct his weirdness, his eccentric nature, Uranus, and his shame, Lilith, in a very harmonious and energetic sextile relationship. That's this blue line here with his sun, his professional personality. That's the midheaven. And so his ego and his public persona, and also his sense of fantasy and his dream nature. That's Neptune. Okay. But also, there's something else in Scorpio, which is very intense and seals the fucking deal. Mars. That's his sexual personality outright. His masculinity, his work energy, how he gets shit done, and it's his like kind of impulsive masculine nature. Since Scorpio, which is very deep, seeks to like get underneath things. And so you can probably see that in his planning personality and in the way he conducts himself in professional life, but it also comes out in the bedroom big time. And it strongly indicates, I actually have statistical data to back this up too, because I've looked at a lot of charts that have similar aspects or almost exact aspects like this one. And Mars in the 10th house, especially if you throw Scorpio into the mix, which makes it deeper and more intense, makes him very interested in workplace role play, where he's the boss and he has like a little secretary or something, who like walks in, oh, Mr. Probst, you have a call. Call it stick, bitch. Like that kind of thing. And then they just like get to it. But it's like more, it's going to be more subtle than how I just portrayed it. I'm not really trying there. Sexually, let me read through the rest of these notes. Sexually, he enjoys power play in which he is the one in control, likely role play situations that place him as the boss, teacher, or status dominant force. He has probably had a lot of trouble fending off mad hoes with daddy issues at work and in the film industry. Obviously, that industry is flooded with those bitches, as we all know, or do we? The bad boy, good man, daddy energy is very apparent with him. He's kind of like a good daddy, but still has this like bad boy undertone to him that makes him kind of alluring and fun, especially when you add that Libra charm to the mix. He can like really talk his way into things and likely does. A suitable partner is extremely attractive and not afraid to enter the public light with him. In fact, it's necessary. Luckily, he's very discerning. So everything and everyone is a hell no before it's a yes. There's a vetting process. Like, he's the one judging you. He's the one deciding if you're good enough. And that makes him even more attractive. Really to everybody, not just to girls with daddy issues, because it means he's commanding respect, you know? And this pairs pretty nicely with that other part of him, the Saturn in Capricorn on the ascendant, that also commands respect in a number of ways. So looking to see if there is anything else that I took notes on. This is kind of just a basic reading, going through some of the basic, most obvious aspects here. I think I actually covered all the planets at least once. Yeah, so it's Scorpio stellium. Scorpio is about depth and getting underneath things and figuring out what the facts are. And it's also about psychological manipulation. It's one of the reasons that Scorpios get a bad rap, but why they're so good in investigation and in law enforcement and like detectives. Scorpios are overrepresented in those kinds of professions, and so he may have like an aura of that about him in his style of like how he orients himself and how he directs himself when he's like delegating and forming people into groups, pairing people up. He may be very authoritarian in style whenever he's managing people on the Survivor show, but in a way that's pretty socially relatable and fair. That in a way that's like intelligent and makes sense. That you're like, okay, yeah, I mean, he's right. Has a huge pre-concern with being right. Really, given everything that we see in the chart. Very ambitious, very career driven, very upward thinking, outward thinking, and upward oriented. He's assertive, he's dynamic, and he's intense as fuck. And that was present probably from the moment he popped out of the womb, being a lunch break baby and everything. And his mom just like popping him out. He gets right to work. She goes back to work. Boom, I'm a person. Let's do it. Let's get this shit done. So that served him well in his professional life, obviously. So anyway, that's my preliminary reading of Jeff Probst, the very charming, very intelligent, very intense, very delegating, stylish and refined host of Survivor. Hope you enjoyed it. I hope this reading was accurate and that it did him justice. Again, I still don't know too much about him, but you let me know how I did. And merry belated Christmas, my African children. See you in the next one. Cheers.